Hey.
Oh, hey.
How you doing?
You doing all right, Chris?
What are you doing up here?
Oh, I was going to come up and meet Representative Sane, talk a little shop, and unfortunately bailed on me, so glad y'all come back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What are y'all doing in the area?
I was just up here, and Brittany was driving around and saw me walking on the street. So,
Well, that's convenient.
yeah,
Very
it's just,
convenient.
you know, you gotta get out of the county every once in a while.
I understand that.
Clear your head.
I understand.
Clear your
I
head.
understand. Well, good.
Yeah.
Glad y'all could join us.
Yeah, we were just talking about legislative affairs and stuff that for the NCEDA,
Yep.
and as you know, this year I'm running the show, but Brittany's.
Congratulations or condolences.
Oh yeah, I know.
Whichever way you want to look
It's a
at
lot
it.
of emails.
Sure.
But Brittany's running legislative stuff for us.
Yeah.
So it's good to have her.
Good, we just happened to find you.
That's pretty exciting.
It is. How long have you been in office?
Let's see, I'll be starting my third term, so this will be my fifth year coming
Okay.
up in the long session next year, which we hope is not in typical fashion really long.
Yeah, just an average.
Just a good average length would be great.
Yeah.
We could be out by the end of summer, that'd be really nice.
So what are your priorities this session?
Well, I work in insurance,
Okay.
and so chairing insurance, so a lot of insurance issues are important to me, and so we got some changes that we're working on coming up this year.
So any economic?
I mean, come on.
yeah,
Economic
no
development.
economic development?
Well, of course, economic development is important. Being chair of commerce,
Okay.
economic development
Just
is
making
extremely
sure.
important. And in Union County, or Sweet Union, as we like to call it, economic development is super important because we're a suburb of Charlotte, so we're always competing to try to get projects and things landed or coming our way. But economic development is especially now coming off of the 12 years of exciting growth in our country, and so now we've got to kind of start rethinking about the future. I don't think it's just going to land in our lap. It's going to take effort and
Right.
intentional effort to continue to bring these projects to North Carolina. We are the #1 ranked state in the country to do business, and so how do we continue that on into the next decade is important.
It's so, like you said, it's so competitive. There's pressure on jobs, there's pressure on so many things. So we've got to put some measures in place to help us,
Sure.
navigate that, keep our existing industries happy, everything else.
Well, and I don't know if you know this, but Chris has been the economic developer in Union County my entire time in politics.
A long time.
And I don't want to brag on him too much,
No.
but many years ago as a commissioner, I remember him saying, you may not know that I remember you telling me this, but when it comes to economic development, it's not a matter of winning these companies. It's a matter of getting them not to check you off the list because they're always looking for some reason to check you off and go to the next stop. So making sure that we have what we need here to keep those businesses looking at us.
You actually listen.
I listen to you.
Wow.
See how that works?
Just listen.
But I won't forget that. So, especially locally, based on experience, it was what do we do to position our county? And now more in a state role, what do we do to position our state and to keep it where we are still going to remain the #1 place to do business?
Right.
And so always thinking that and kind of having that litmus test is very important, I think, with the decisions we make.
Did he give you all the things that manufacturing pays for? Because that's what Chris is good at. He will remind you that manufacturing pays the bills and then tell you how much the line item is.
Of course he did.
Yes.
Yeah, he always makes sure to remind me of that, for sure.
I do the same in my community.
Right.
Yeah. Manufacturing pays the bills. We say it over and over
Sure
and over.
does.
Right.
We have to remind Chris of that.
You want that new copier? I got to go generate $5 million more of stuff to pay for the. It's amazing how much capital investment it takes to cover the cost of certain, because North Carolina locally, the taxes are so low in relative terms. People don't necessarily feel it if they haven't been other places, but when we come in from South Carolina, it's 2.5, 3 times more expensive at a local level than it is here. So those local, it takes a lot more capital investment to cover the
it
cost
doesn't
of
just
doing
happen.
business.
No.
That doesn't just happen. It's, again, intentional efforts that have occurred over the last 12, 14 years to make that happen. But it doesn't just stay that way either. You have to constantly be sharpening the saw to make sure that we remain competitive. And so I think you could expect some more movement toward that, even with the corporate tax rate going to zero in the next few years, and then also personal income tax, which does play into our economic development because as these businesses look to relocate, they're going to take all of that into consideration: education, things to do, tax rates, etc. So we can't take our eye off the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do we stay on your radar this year? We have some big priorities. We were just talking about them. How can we stay top of mind in economic development in the legislature.
Well, I think as with any legislator or any activist group or any group that's trying to promote a certain policy, it's all about the story. And I think North Carolina Economic Development has the story to tell. And so making sure that that story stays front of mind of all the legislators is how you continue to grow this and to make economic development a priority in our state. So making sure you've got the story, the past successes. It's okay to talk about past failures too, because that kind of lets us know what not to do, and things we've tried that didn't work. But I think that's a great way to stay on legislators' radar and make sure that that repetition is important, because once we get up there, things get super busy, and you've got everybody trying to pull you in all these different directions, and every person's issue is their most important issue.
Right.
And so trying to balance that. So always people remember a story.
Story.
So have that story and make sure that you say it over and over again.
You've got tons of stories since you've been doing this for 100 years.
And some of them are actually worth listening to.
They are. There are some good ones.
Well,
It's
as a
history
voter,
class.
as a voter, what should I not do?
You shouldn't tell your legislator that you're a voter.
Oh, are you
Ever
sure?
Yeah, I'm very sure of that. Because one thing that I figured out in 4 years, and I like to tell this, and especially anything partisan that I go to, when I say this, they want to throw me out until they actually listen to why. There's 170, 50 in the Senate, 120 in the House. There's 170 people that are there for the right reason. Even if you disagree with 100% of what they do, they're there for the right reason. You couldn't do it otherwise. Being away from your family, being away from your community, very little pay, does not cover the cost. These people that take the time to be a legislator actually care about their communities. And even though we are polar opposite on different issues and stuff, we are very lucky to have just 170 really, really awesome people serving our legislature. And so there you go. There's my plug for my colleagues.
Gotcha.
Do you have any war stories of dealing with constituents? Don't name names.
No, I won't name names. Chris
Platé?
No, Chris is always manageable. He's manageable.
Dana
we
doesn't
have.
say that.
I think a lot of times though, you've got to put yourself in the constituent shoe, because what might seem very nothing to you is a big deal to them, because it takes a lot of courage to reach out to a legislator. And what I tell, especially my constituents, I said, emails, we get 500 a day. They are looked at, but you're not going. But if you call, that kind of raises the intensity of it. But then if you visit, now it's on the forefront. So making sure that constituents' issues are important to you is a big deal. It's a really big deal. So war stories, we've had some pretty nasty ones, but for the most part, it's still a truly privilege to serve. Now, if I ever get kind of down and out and I want to get a good laugh, I'll pull up my phone and I'll pull up my legislative email, and you can do word searches. So pick a 4-letter explicit, put it in the word search, and then just start reading all the names that you've been called. And it gives you a good laugh every now and again.
Yeah, it keeps you humble.
Because folks, it does. Because, as I said, the issues to the constituent are very important to them. And if you don't give them the attention that they feel like it deserves, people get a little awry. But I think letting people speak and have an opportunity to get things off their chest has always helped.
When you say come visit, I always remind, when I first started going up there was chairs in the hallway.
Oh, yeah.
There's no chairs now. So your stamina's got to be pretty good. You can walk the halls.
That's right. And as a reminder, I serve in Raleigh, not in Washington. So the nasty emails about confirm Judge Kavanaugh today, do your job. And I don't serve in the U.S. I'm kind of more like Senator Light.
Okay. That's a good.
But it affects most things that people deal with locally.
And I've always said local politics is where it's done. We've had a lot of communication about local politics. Serving as county commissioner in Union County, the decisions we made on Monday night affected somebody's life Tuesday morning. And at the state legislature, it's a little further out. We'll pass a piece of legislation, and somebody may recognize it a month down the road. But then with the federal government, it may be a year or 2 years even before people even realize what's been done. So understanding that all politics are local is uber important. And just having to kind of balance that. But we do get a lot of confusion, folks not really understanding the difference between Raleigh and D.C. But by far, your state legislature will affect your life before the U.S. Congress or U.S. Senate
Absolutely.
will make an impact.
Absolutely.
One of the things, you served on the Economic Development Commission locally in Union County and worked with our office, and you know it's important. And because of the things that we put in place as a state, we've been extremely successful, as we talked about. But now we've sort of emptied the wagon. And I know that y'all have done some things with the mega sites that you started to work on. And Brittany and I were talking about, we've got a new proposal this year to help out sort of things under the mega sites.
Sure.
And develop, build product again, that we can actually start to sell, get sites ready and those kind of things. I don't know if you want to kind of...
Yeah, to mega sites, I think that's a great proposal. There's been a lot of attraction, honestly more than I thought there was going to be, which is wonderful. But when we think about all 100 counties, not all 100 counties are going to have a mega site. Not all regions are going to have a mega site, and I will advocate for Western North Carolina. But there's folks on the coast, there's folks in Union County, that 20 acres would move the needle. 50 acres would move the needle. And so we're looking at policy that will help all 100 counties, as low as 20 acres up to 999 acres, with due diligence, with site acquisition, many of the things that are hurdles, because clients today, they're moving so fast. It used to feel like you could wait on a greenfield. Everyone wants the building that was built yesterday, and you can't get them quick enough. And so we need to be more proactive and have policies in place that will help all 100 counties, because that 20-acre project can be absolutely transformational in a community. And so we need to make sure that we're thinking, how are we going to change all 100 counties?
Right. Particularly like Henderson County or the mountains. You don't have 1,000 acres without taking mountains down, and our topography has got creeks and just there's something constant, right? Or old cemeteries or old whatever. So they're trying to get a larger site is extremely difficult. So to us, 200 acres is amazing to put together.
Well, and you don't really necessarily have to have all mega sites to make an impact, because there are very few communities in our state that even has the manpower to run the mega site once you get it up and running. And so while I think mega sites are very important, it can't be your own. You can't be a one-trick pony with it. You've got to have the opportunity to bring other folks into the mix and have different smaller sites that can have just as big an impact. And I think it's all relative too. So you think about a job that brings 50 jobs to Western North Carolina or Eastern North Carolina is the same equivalent to the community as a mega site in Sanford that's going to bring 2,000 jobs.
Right.
It has the same impact on that community. And so we can't lose sight of that.
Absolutely. What about workforce? We're talking about all these wins. Workforce is a huge challenge post-pandemic. What are your thoughts? What's the silver bullet for workforce?
Well, first off, there is no silver bullet. And
great.
we win first by understanding there is no silver bullet, but a compilation of a change in the culture of what we think. And I think first it starts right out the gate with making sure that school-age kids know that they do not have to have a 4-year degree to be successful.
Yes.
Especially now with my son being in 12th grade and my other son being in 9th grade, people are asking, what are they going to do after school? Because he's got 6 months till he's got to make decisions. Where's he going to college? That's the way they ask. Where is he going to college? Well, actually, my son's probably not going to go to a 4-year college. It's just not him. He's probably going to do more like a trade. And maybe go to South Piedmont Community College, which I encourage. Well, I'll tell you, for 4 years prior to serving in the legislature, I served on the State Board of Community Colleges. And the story that I'm fixing to tell you was told every single week. Someone would come out of high school, they'd go to a 4-year college, raise up a bunch of debt, go out and try to find a job, couldn't find a job, go back to the community college, learn a trade, and then go get a job. At that point in time, they're saddled with $200,000, $300,000 of debt. Whereas if they would have, and years of lost productivity. Whereas if they'd have come out of high school, learned the trade, they wouldn't have had the debt. There's a zero barrier to entry in the state community college. It's one of the greatest things we have in North Carolina that actually drives economic development, I believe. And it's okay. You're not a second-class citizen if you go to community. Now, there's some people that need to go to a 4-year college, and that's great, and we need to encourage that. But it's not for everybody.
No, it's not.
Let's talk about the community college is our best incentive.
It is.
But at the same time, we need to make sure that we have folks working in the community college system they can afford to do it. Because so many times they're training these folks to do these jobs, and they end up making a lot less money doing
they've
it.
left that high-paying job to go in.
That's
and
right.
Teach
So we need
it.
to make sure that we keep up with our salaries and benefits for our community college employees and faculty, so that we still have the breeding ground for these young entrepreneurs or young factory workers or whatever to be able to continue to grow and provide.
That was one of our legislative priorities last year, and it's continued in this year, is to kind of look at those border states and what they're paying their community college and technical training instructors.
Sure.
And so we need to be there. You know,
We
at least at that.
You know, our community college system in North Carolina is nicknamed the Great 58 for a reason. You know, states from all over the country come to our state and say, we want to replicate what you're doing. Because how we've done it and how it's set up here in the state is a gem that I think a lot of people underestimate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But we've gotta show them the love that they need.
Right.
And we've got to beef up those non-traditional, even with community college, there's this entry that a lot of people just think I start, but we've got apprenticeships and other work-based learning and credentials that we also need to beef up, which is another priority that we want to focus on. Because those, you know, you think of that student who hates school, you tell them they're going to do an apprenticeship program, they still have to go to school, but let's make that more manageable for them so they can still learn and enjoy and better themselves.
Intentional.
Yep.
And they see what their learning is for versus like, why am I
Yep, they can
taking
connect the dots.
algebra?
Right.
And all of a sudden they start to see the connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely.